Hello, my name is Scott Karsner, and welcome to my lesson on Autism Spectrum Disorders for Class EDU 214 at Anne Arundel Community College. An objective is students will understand causes, symptoms, and behaviors, and teaching strategies for students with autistic spectrum disorders while knowing where to go to find more information. During this presentation, we will review what do you already know, definitions, causes, symptoms and behaviors, teaching strategies, what's next for ASD, and where can you go to find more information? Do we already know about autism? Unless you know someone with an autistic spectrum disorder, primary sources for the general public is likely media. Perhaps you've seen the 1988 film Rain Man, or a newer television show like Atypical, which ran on Netflix in recent years. Main characters in both have forms of an autistic spectrum disorder. Rain Man is a film that largely shaped a generation's perception of people with autistic spectrum disorders and has unnecessarily conflated multiple disorders and syndromes. Dustin Hoffman played Raymond Babbitt alongside Tom Cruise as Charlie Babbitt. Hoffman's fictitious movie character Raymond is an autistic savant, meaning he has autism and savant syndrome. This is a rare combination. Spectrum disorders are autistic disorder, commonly referred to as autism, autistic spectrum disorder, commonly referred to as ASD, and pervasive development disorder, not otherwise specified as autism. The IDEA definition is a developmental disability significantly affecting verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction, generally evident before the age 3, that adversely affects a child's educational performance. Other characteristics often associated with autism are engagement in repetitive activities and stereotyped movements, resistance to environmental change or change in daily routines, and unusual response to sensory experiences. What differentiates this is it is generally evident before age 3 and displays cognitive deficits in addition to the communication and social deficit. Autistic spectrum disorder, ASD. Individuals with this disorder have social interaction impairments and develop restrictive, repetitive interests, beliefs, and activities that impair social, occupational, and other areas of functioning. Autistic spectrum disorder does not have accompanying communication impairments. Pervasive development disorder, not otherwise specified. Child displays some autistic behaviors and meets some but not all of the criteria for any of the other pervasive development disorders. This is typically diagnosed after age 3. For this presentation geared toward the general education teacher, I will not parse out which teaching strategies are for which specific autism spectrum disorder, but rather talk about strategies that target many different behaviors and characteristics common to these disorders. For simplicity, I will refer to students with ASD as it applies to the characteristics and strategies as they fit the various definitions. Causes. Science is unable to point to a specific cause for ASD, but it's generally accepted belief that it is brain-based and potentially genetic in nature through twin studies. What has been disproven are some controversial theories about causes of autism. Autism is not a result of poor parenting or a vaccine side effect. Some cases have been traced to problems during pregnancy and delivery, viral infections, metabolic imbalances, and infant seizures. Characteristics and behaviors of people with ASD are the triad of social impairments, which are difficulty interacting with other people in social context, difficulty communicating with others both verbally and non-verbally, which can be challenging when building social relationships. Some with ASD may refer to themselves in the third person. Others may parrot words known as echolalia. Often a person with ASD interprets things literally. Rigidity and restrictive behavioral repertoire and imaginative skills. Examples might be repetitive play and insistence on sameness, self-injury, extreme need for elaborate routines, unusual preoccupations. Specific sensory and motor characteristics include abnormal response to sensory stimuli, reduced sensitivity to pain, heat, or cold, abnormal activity levels, eating, and sleeping behaviors, motor stereotypes such as rocking back and forth. And cognitive characteristics of autism include possible low IQ, difficulty in executive functioning. It is worth noting that the visual skills of a person with ASD are typically strong. How to teach. To address the needs of the student with ASD, most will be in the general education classroom with modifications. Some students need major adaptations, a more functional academic approach focused on goals in functional communication, social skills, and cognitive skill development. Regardless of where students receive their services, scholars echo the need for early intervention. Instructional approaches. Most scholars recommend teaching strategies, including a visual approach, giving students visual cues for expected behavior and steps. Visual supports can be used in the following ways: organizing the student's activities, providing directions and instructions, supporting appropriate behavior, and teaching self-control. Give specific and positive reinforcement, often by telling students what they're doing right. Be precise, as students might interpret generalized praise to be inclusive of all the positive and negative behaviors they are doing at the time. Use age and difficulty level appropriate materials to prevent undue frustration. Provide choices, as almost everybody likes autonomy. If the student loves specific topics, direct and broaden fixations into useful activities for teaching. Be clear to highlight what is important through direct oral instructions in small steps, and use concrete examples, physical examples, or a hands-on activity. In addition to strategies for classroom management already mentioned, other factors a teacher controls are the instructional environment, a quiet zone, and student grouping. The instructional environment. Change and transition are areas students with ASD may have difficulty. A teacher can let students know of upcoming changes and transitions before they happen. Transitions may be a change in schedule, rearranging the furniture, or a substitute teacher. Student grouping. For instructional grouping, strategically place students with ASD in groups with peers who are inclined to help teach and who have previously been taught about ASD. Quiet zone. Your classroom could have a quiet zone where students can go to calm down, which might prevent a tantrum. Strategies for communication development. Give the child many opportunities to communicate in all settings. Any socially acceptable attempt to communicate should be reinforced in all settings. Work together with all significant people in the student's environment to make the communication training as consistent as possible. Develop conversation skills by teaching within naturally occurring social contexts, like at lunch, the playground, and in the classroom. Speak in full sentences to model speech. Develop oral speech comprehension. Appropriate vocabulary is to be used for the age and comprehension level of the student. Develop oral language expression. Use precise language that is clear and simple. Allow for teacher wait time for students to process information. Strategies for social skills. What is a societal norm you might take for granted? Take a look at this photo. What societal norms are you seeing? Some people are making music. Some people are sitting, standing, or maybe roasting marshmallows. For situations like this, think about what a student with ASD needs to be taught about the social norms. Society has a set of social norms. They aren't always explicitly discussed, but there are behaviors that range from socially acceptable to those that are inappropriate and potentially dangerous. Social norms may need to be directly taught to those students with ASD. Carol Gray developed a strategy to teach social skills using social stories. The book Teaching Students with Autism Spectrum Disorder states, a social story is a description of a social situation that includes the social cues and appropriate responses, and that is written for the specific situation for the individual student. Strategies for cognitive and academic skill development. Cognitive skills were discussed throughout, but some highlights are: model for students how a skill taught can be used in a real-life situation. Use a structured text guide to help students organize their learning information. And graphic organizers can be used to help student comprehension. Assistive technology. High technology options might include the use of software on a computer, making videos and audio recordings. Mid-technology options might include supporting devices like calculators, timers, and smartboards. Low-technology options that advantage student visual strength can prove to be very effective teaching strategies Techniques may use printed computer images based on visual representation systems. My favorite strategy is a way to ease transitions between activities. While doing activity, the student has one of 3 cards on their desk placed there by the teacher. The first card is green and says go. The second card is yellow and says almost done. Put there 1 to 2 minutes left in an activity. The third card is red octagon and says stop. What's next for ASD? Of the brain scientists around the globe researching ASD, one 2021 study that stood out is titled A Deep Neural Network-Based Model for Screening Autism Spectrum Disorder Using the Quantitative Checklist of Autism in Toddlers, which was performed by researchers in India and the UAE. For the American Academy of Pediatrics, screening for ASD are a standard part of a toddler's primary care visits. The checklist for autism in toddlers, CHAT, has been formulated and improved upon over the last 2 decades. This study centered on machine learning algorithms for the early ASD diagnosis to be used as a screening tool. While they noted there were still false positives and false negatives, they are at a much lower rate than when testing was performed by humans, which is attributed to a lack of bias and a lack of manual entry errors. In their conclusion, they stated, our findings show that using a well-trained deep learning model, a quick and accurate early screening of ASD is possible. Family and community resources. There are many national and international autism societies, research organizations, foundations, advocacy networks, and awareness groups that exist. One organization I would recommend is the U.S. Health and Human Services Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee. You can also learn more here about the Autism Cares Act of 2019. Autism Society can be found online at autismsociety.org, a national organization headquartered in Rockville, Maryland, with affiliate groups in 33 states and the District of Columbia, including one in Baltimore and Howard County. The website is filled with resources. The last resource I would recommend is a video on autism from the YouTube channel, Your Special Education Rights. The whole channel is a resource for families in need of special education processing information and information on the IDEA eligibility categories. Are you looking for a teacher resource? Supporting Adolescents with Autism in Secondary Schools was published in 2023 by a group of scholars creating the Center on Secondary Education for Students with Autism Spectrum Disorder. In the last decade, the research and development for the program has been piloted in North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Southern California. Read the book to find out more ways you can help students with ASD. Wait, to assess learning today, we are doing a 3-2-1. Name 3 things you learned. Name 2 things you found interesting that you want to learn more about. And name 1 question you still have. Here's the list of references used in today's presentation. Again, this is Scott Karsner with EDU 214 at Anne Arundel Community College. Thank you for listening today, and hopefully you learned something new you can use with your students.